episode 10 of my running vlog, ultra running vlog, as I'm racing 100-mile ultra marathon at least every month for the past 2.5 years. This episode is pretty special. It's 2 weeks on the road, working remotely, yes, but racing Angeles Crest 100-mile and Leadville 100-mile. Hi, Simon here. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to my running vlog. On this channel, you will mostly find ultra running documentary of my race 100-mile ultra marathon. I'm also providing a lot of tips video. More recently, I've started a little bit of gear review. And there's this running vlog where we go on a day-to-day basis as to my training preparation to race 100-mile ultra marathon. The past 2 weeks were quite packed. We raced Angeles Crest 100-mile, maybe a week or two before I'm able to release it. Then we directly drove to Colorado, working remotely but trying to get acclimated to altitude because the next race was Leadville 100-mile, which is at high altitude. And Leadville 100-mile, you need to be fresh for that race because 30 hours for that course is quite tight and the cutoff all day long are chasing you. So I really focus on this cycle on recovery and tapering. Also, if you've seen my last episode, I was quite banged up after my last race coming in Angeles Crest. So I really wanted to focus on being healthy and as much as possible, getting used to altitude. Of course, it would have been much better if I was able to take vacation for that time and go hiking, but that was not in the car. So we tried to make the most out of it working at altitude, but it's not quite the same. Nora was neither pacing or crewing for that race. She was around, but we had to drive immediately after the race to head to Colorado. Now, LA to Colorado is a solid maybe 15-16 hour drive, so that was not even remotely possible. But we drove halfway there on Sunday, so I was quite tight in the car. That was not necessarily the best recovery. Then working from a Starbucks on Monday, also not the most productive setting to work, but we did what we had to do and then drove all the way to Breckenridge. So the first 2 days I was actually not able to do any workout, and it was not necessarily because I didn't want to do active recovery. It was simply that I needed to put in the work or we were in the car. So Monday, Tuesday, nothing happened. Even Wednesday I was trying to catch up. I was able to have a little bit of sauna with Nora just to relax. So it was not until Thursday that I was able to do something physical. In one way I was not necessarily feeling too bad about it because, as I said, I was really trying to do something different to go slower even on active recovery. But Thursday I decided, I need to get used to altitude. So I did a kind of mix of walking, hiking up and running downhill. 10 mile, pretty solid, 2 hours, not necessarily the fastest, but there was a lot of elevation gain. And remember, we're at altitude. I think maybe that was at 9,000 feet elevation going all the way to 11,000. So slowly getting used to altitude. As soon as you go uphill at that altitude, coming directly from sea level and being still banged up from my last race, I was totally out of breath. And I knew that, wow, this is going to be a rush to get used to 10,000, 11,000, 12,000 feet for racing Leadville the week afterwards. Friday, we started the day pretty early for working because I was volunteering in the afternoon at the Leadville 100-mile mountain biking. As much as possible, I try to volunteer at race, but it's pretty difficult with my calendar. But I think that's a great way to give back to the community. And also, especially if it's a running race, then I get to meet a lot of you guys, which I really much appreciate. For Leadville particularly, that will also enable me to race next year. But that also meant that I didn't really have time to do anything. The walk that I did was mostly just getting to the check-in. So it was nothing really exciting or to talk about. But what was exciting is that, sure, I had to work after the check-in volunteering. But after that, we were able to meet some friends in preparation for the race next week, which is always great. The reason we come back for Leadville are for the people in our friend or our small kind of community. So it's great to catch up with them before the race itself. Saturday, I did what is traditional volunteering for me. Okay, it's only the second time, but for the mountain biking race, I really like to be at Columbine 8th Station. If you don't know the race, the Leadville 100-mile mountain biking, it's 100-mile. It's not the same course as the Leadville 100-mile run. It kind of goes in the same area, but it's kind of different. So the crux of the Leadville 100-mile run is doing Hope Pass twice. And the crux of doing the mountain biking, for me, would be the downhill power line. But the physical part is climbing up Columbine, which I think is something like a 3,000 feet of climb. So So usually to go there, you catch a ride with another volunteer. You need to have a four-wheel drive. It's not the easiest road to go up there. Unfortunately, I missed my ride, so I had to run all the way up there, which was a good workout in the end. That was absolutely not planned, but it was perfect because I didn't really have time to do more. But it's a solid, I think, 8 miles to do that climb, and I think 3,000 feet of elevation. So a good workout. It was good for me to getting used to altitude and being at that aid station, which I think might be at 12,000 feet of elevation all day in the sun, was also good to get used to altitude. After that, we were able again to catch up with some friends at their campground, but I had a huge headache, so we had to leave fairly early, especially that the plan now was to do a 14er the next day, Mount Massive, and we recruited Leon to do that. Now, Mount Massive, we actually didn't summit because the weather turned for the worse. We could have done it, it just wouldn't have been pleasant, but we had a great chat figuring out which vegetable we would be if we were vegetable. Decent workout, especially that I was still kind of in recovery mode. Then we went to Copper Mountain. Finding accommodation for Leadville during race week is not always the easiest. And typically what we do is that we're in Copper Mountain for the week before the race. It's a little cheaper. It's a great spot to work. I don't know that it's necessarily the most exciting town in summer, but if you're just working from a hotel room, it's totally fine. So now we're entering taper week. Again, no training week per se in that cycle, unfortunately, but I was starting to feel a little bit better physically, and also was getting a little antsy. I didn't really like how much I was kind of headache and tired after the Columbine climb and staying up at altitude. So all week I felt like every day I had to at least go out there, walk a little bit, do something more than just sitting in front of the computer. So Monday, that's what I did. It was kind of an in-between run and walking. It's outside of the mountain, so as soon as you start going up, you have to climb, and that's where I kind of power hike a little bit more, and then I run on the downhill. 6 mile, nothing crazy, but getting slowly used to altitude, which is also what I did Tuesday and Wednesday. Shorter a little bit on Tuesday because of time, then Wednesday back at the 6 mile. So again, not a crazy workout, but at least getting moving a little bit. We also were able to do some hot tub, similar to sauna. And the reason for that is that we heard that the forecast would be really, really hot for the Leadville 100 mile. And that's something to be careful about. And if you're going to race Leadville or race at altitude, it's good to know that if they forecast something like 80, 85, it doesn't sound so hot if you live in Phoenix and it's 110 all the time or something crazy like that. But at altitude, it will hit you different. You will lose your sweat very quickly, you'll get dehydrated, and it's a kind of double whammy also for nutrition. It's already pretty difficult to fuel at altitude. You're more likely to have GI issue, and it's also harder to fuel when it's hot. So you combine the two, and that can make for a pretty rough day. So I was kind of worried about that, and I tried to include a little bit more of heat training session. Thursday was the biggest workout I actually did in my whole cycle, which was not necessarily the smartest, but Copper Mountain, you can go all the way up, and every time I was going out, I was not reaching it, and that day I decided, I'm tired of worrying, I'm tired of all this crap, I'm just gonna go up all the way and then see the other side of the mountain. I know it wouldn't hurt me, but I know also there were no benefit of doing that other than I was just kind of annoyed with work and annoyed of just always being in front of the computer. Then Friday, similar to the week before, I was volunteering at the check-in, and it was so great. I mean, I met so many of you guys out there that were gonna race Leadville for the first time, people that are following me. It's really great to meet in person. I'm always sorry when I forget the name. I'm terrible with name, and I know a lot of you actually succeeded in racing Leadville 100, which is a difficult race. It's always a stressful race for me. And I know that some people fell short. Again, it's a difficult race. You really have to push the pace, and you have to keep going. There's not much margin for error in a race like Leadville 100 mile. And unless you've trained at altitude, you're going to be throwing a few curveball at you. You might be sick. You might struggle with the climbs. You might want to go a little slower, but cut-off are kind of pushing you to a pace that is uncomfortable. So what I want to say is, first, it was great to meet all of you. It was great to volunteer. A lot of people there that I was volunteering with. Great meeting you. People that were checking it, great meeting you. If you didn't have the day that you were hoping for, I'm really sorry for that. But I recently posted 2 videos about how to avoid DNF, but importantly, how to deal with DNF and grow from that. Because I don't think the road to success is necessarily a straight path forward. There's a lot that you can learn from any experience that were negative, and hopefully, it sucks. It's really not what you train for. This is never what you want as an outcome. And personally, I mean, I wish everyone would have finished Leadville 100 mile. It's never going to happen that there's a year that 100% finish rate. But I really hope that with my tips video, people are able to go a little further. And maybe there's a couple people that would have been a DNF and then they're able to finish. So hopefully that's the case. And now it's Leadville 100 mile run. It's my fourth time doing it, so I kind of know the ropes a little bit. I know where I need to push, I know where I need to slow down. And if you're ever gonna race Leadville 100 mile, I do have a tip video about Leadville specifically. Of course, I suggest you have a look at my video so you can see when I actually struggle, when it's easier, and what's the flow of the race. And you'll most likely see that this is a fast-paced race for the first 40 miles. You kind of have to push the pace. You need to get to Twin Lake with enough time to go and do Hope Pass, which is the big climb that you do twice. It's not exactly a mountain race. It's not even my favorite course out there, but it's one of my favorite races. And the reason for that is that we have a lot of friends that we met there, and every year this is kind of a reunion. I think Leadville 100 mile is maybe the biggest 100 mile in the US. I'm actually not sure, but it's a big race. It's kind of a happening, and for me, that's just a great way to connect with my friend, connect with the community, meet so many fantastic people. So for that reason, Leadville is very special. But also, every time I race it, I'm nervous about it. And for good reason. There's only one year that I had a good year, and now 3 out of 4 were years that were so-so. I was never super close to be a DNF, but at the same time, it's uncomfortably close. If something bad would happen, you might miss the cutoff. And that's where Leadville is always a fight to the finish. But Leadville is good at unlocking that, kind of lighting the fire under me where, okay, Simon, like you don't have time to chill too much right now. Like you kind of have to go. And it's interesting to see how my mood will shift during the day. At first, this is the big party. I'm so excited to be around people. That's probably true until mile 40-ish. Then I get really nervous because I'm behind cutoff. That's exactly what happens. You kind of have to push through Hope Pass, but really struggling at the same time. But we made it, and I had help this time. So Nora was there crewing for me, pacing for me, and then we had a friend also, John, who paced me the last 24-ish mile. So it was good to have support. And that's actually how I met Brian, Coach Brian, which we have the Buckle Up series. We had a great interview very recently with Zoe, who I think finished second at Leadville this year. So it was a great chat with her. We also have an episode coming up with someone who raced Tahoe Rim Trail, Lorena, which I suggest you have a look. With this podcast, we're really trying to interview both kind of pro level figures that you probably heard of or know of, but also people from the community, people that have great story to share or that have a journey that is interesting. And the race itself, of course, I'm going to post a recap about it. I'm aiming for 2 weeks because we're going to have exciting adventure coming up soon. So I kind of have to work on my race recap right now. It went okay. It was not my best day. It was not my worst day. I struggled with altitude from the get-go. I was not acclimated properly, or maybe I was getting a little bit sick. It's a little difficult to know. Even now, I kind of feel it a little bit in my lung and my throat. But it was not my worst experience at Leadville. We were pretty fortunate, so the heat was there, but we had cloud cover sometimes and wind, so it was not that bad, and because of that, I was able to push the pace, at least at the beginning. Eventually, of course, I struggled eating. Eventually, of course, I struggled with sleepiness. That's just something that lately has always been an issue, but I think I was coming in better shape, or maybe not shape, but not as banged up as I was before Angeles Crest. So Angeles Crest, I think I said it in the last episode, if I could have postponed it, I would have postponed it, but I couldn't, so I decided to do it. I knew I could do it anyway, but I knew I was not quite 100%, whereas for Leadville, I felt that physically I was okay. I was not acclimated, that was the main issue, but my legs, my knees, my ankles, my muscles, they were okay. It was fine. Of course, longer recovery would have been better, but it was really not an issue this time around. And I think it really shows that it's hard to predict how quickly you can recover from a race. I have a good sense of what it takes, but sometimes it's going to be slower and sometimes it's going to be faster. And this time was not necessarily the fastest recovery, but it was a good recovery. So I felt that I came in somewhat healthy. And yeah, if I had 1 or 2 weeks extra to acclimate to altitude and be able to go up there in the mountain and hiking, that would have made a huge difference. But hey, I did it. I'm very proud that I did it. I'm very proud that I pushed through. And more importantly, what was really exciting this year is that I think we were, what, 4 or 5? I would need to count, but we were a group of friends that were all picked this year to race it this year. And most people didn't have a good day. But like my friend Mark, who was pacing me one time at Leadville, he finished. He had a really rough day, but he made it through. Same thing with Coach Brian, who finished his 9th. Leadville 100 mile, meaning that the big 10-year buckle is in sight. We had Ryan, who finished, became a leadman, so congratulations, Ryan. We had Colin also flying over and finishing the race, so congratulations to everyone, and congratulations to everyone I talked to, and hopefully my tip video has helped a few people out there see that finish line. That's always been the goal. And so Leadville was the last big race of the summer, but we're not done with big adventure. What's next? Big thing coming up. So first, finally, Nora and I were able to take some time off. We're flying to Europe. We're gonna do Tour du Mont Blanc, not UTMB itself, but the same course over a few days. That's gonna be very exciting. I've never trail run in the Alps, even though I was living in Europe before. That was for my PhD. I was way too busy to do that kind of thing. So it's gonna be great to be with Nora over there. And after that, I'm doing my big race of the season. In fact, the big race of my life, the race that I'm the most scared of, but the most excited about, which is Tour des Géants, 200 mile in the Italian Alps with 80,000 feet of elevation gain. So pretty hardcore. I have experience now finally with the 200 miler with Cocodona, so hopefully it will go smoothly, but I don't expect it to go smoothly. I expect that I will need to dig deep, but also be amazed by the beauty of the Alps. So it's a race I've been very excited about racing ever since I started trail and ultra running. That's a race I've always felt was too difficult for me, but I'm finally heading there. I'm finally trying it out, and we'll see how it goes. I can't wait to share that with you guys. Finally, with the channel, we passed a big milestone, 21.1 thousand followers. And if you're in the metric system, you know that that's a half marathon. So thank you for watching. I hope these videos are helpful. If this video today was helpful or in general, please leave a thumbs up, a comment below, share with your friends, and see you next time.